Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the perfect Victorian drawing room. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, illuminating the latest in fashionable decor, a breathtaking wallpaper, shimmering with the most brilliant, luminous green you've ever seen. It's a work of art, the envy of all your friends, and it's also flaking arsenic dust into the air with every breath you take. Spoiler alert, if this were your house, you wouldn't be redecorating next year. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's get one thing straight about living in the 19th century. Your life isn't about pursuing your dreams or finding your inner self. No, your primary, all-consuming mission is to prove that you are just a little bit better than everyone else on your street. And your home? That's the main stage for this grand, passive-aggressive performance. You are a respectable member of the Victorian middle class. You have a decent income, a tightly laced corset, and a crippling anxiety about social status. This is the original Keeping Up with the Joneses, except your neighbours are probably named Abernathy, and instead of comparing lawnmowers, you're locked in a silent, decorative war of attrition. Every teacup, every curtain, every new piece of furniture is a carefully chosen weapon in this fight for social supremacy. This isn't just a casual hobby. It's a full-time, unpaid job with no holidays. The Industrial Revolution has flooded the market with mass-produced goods, creating a dizzying array of choices, and therefore a million new ways to get it wrong. Before, poverty was the great equalizer. Now, with a little factory money, anyone can try to look like a lord, which makes the actual lords furious, and everyone else deeply insecure. Your home has become your public resume, your social media profile rendered in brick, plaster, and a suffocating amount of fabric. It's the first and last thing people will judge you on, and the judgment is swift, silent, and merciless. Your biggest fear, the one that keeps you awake at night while the coal fire sputters, isn't cholera or a stock market crash. It's the fear of being considered common. It's the terror of someone walking into your parlor and thinking, even for a fleeting second, that your taste is unrefined, your possessions are second-rate, or, worst of all, that you are trying too hard. The irony is that everyone is trying desperately, pathologically hard. The trick is to make it all look effortless, as if you were simply born with an innate understanding of which fork to use for the fish course and the precise number of porcelain dogs that is considered tasteful on a mantelpiece. The correct answer is 7, and they must all look vaguely judgmental. The parlor is the primary battlefield. You almost never use this room yourself. It is a cold, formal museum dedicated to the idea of your own respectability. Heavy velvet curtains, swagged and tasseled to within an inch of their lives, block out most of the natural light, partly to prevent the sun from fading the upholstery, but mostly because gloominess is considered a sign of serious thought. Every surface is cluttered. There's the whatnot shelf in the corner, groaning under the weight of sentimental trinkets from a seaside holiday you didn't enjoy. There are family portraits where everyone looks like they're being held hostage. And, of course, the pianoforte, which no one in your family can actually play, but which serves as an expensive, oversized statement piece declaring your cultural aspirations. Social life is governed by a set of unwritten rules, so complex they'd make a modern lawyer weep. The ritual of the calling card, for instance, is a masterclass in passive aggression. You have a small silver tray in your entryway, and its contents are a public scoreboard of your social standing. A full tray means you are popular, sought after, a pillar of the community. An empty tray means you are a social leper, and you might as well pack up and move to a remote sheep farm. When a visitor calls, they present a card. If you are at home, your maid accepts it. If you are not at home, even if you are clearly visible through the window, it's a polite but firm rejection. This is how you wage war without ever raising your voice. And then there is your nemesis, your arch rival. The woman whose silent approval you crave and whose judgment you fear above all else. Mrs. Abernathy from across the street. She is the unofficial queen of the neighborhood, a walking encyclopedia of etiquette with a stare that could curdle milk. When she pays a call, your entire household descends into a state of controlled panic. The maid frantically polishes the silver tray. The cook frets over the quality of the tea cakes. And you? You stand before your mirror, adjusting your dress, practicing a smile that looks welcoming but not desperate. When she arrives, the inspection begins. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scan the room. She notes the freshness of the flowers, the arrangement of the books on the table, are they intellectual but not offensively so, and the state of your mantelpiece. The true test comes when she subtly runs a gloved finger along the edge of a side table. If it comes away clean, you can breathe for a second. If it shows the slightest trace of dust, you have failed. She won't say a word, of course. She'll just give a tiny, almost imperceptible smile, and you'll know, the entire neighborhood will know by sundown. You've let a speck of dust compromise your moral and social standing. While you are upstairs, engaged in this high-stakes psychological drama, an entirely different war is being waged below stairs. Your servants, the invisible gears in your machine of respectability, are in a constant, frantic battle against the filth of the 19th century. The coal fires that keep you warm also coat every surface in a fine layer of greasy soot. The gas lamps, a modern marvel, leak and smell. Dust isn't just an annoyance, it's an invading army. Maintaining the illusion of effortless perfection requires back-breaking, thankless labor. The perfectly polished floors, the gleaming silverware, the spotless windows, they are the result of someone else's exhaustion, a reality you prefer to ignore. This is the world you inhabit, a world where your worth is measured by the quality of your china and the quiet obedience of your children. A world of suffocating performance, where every choice is a potential triumph or a devastating mistake. The pressure is immense, the anxiety is constant, and you are desperate for an advantage, a secret weapon that will silence the critics, dazzle your rivals, and finally, conclusively, prove that you belong. You need something that doesn't just whisper good taste, but screams unquestionable superiority. Right now, though, your primary weapon, your house, is failing you. Let's be honest, the interior is a festival of beige. Your walls are a depressing symphony of muted browns, sad-looking greys, and the distinct color of wet dirt. This isn't a failure of imagination on your part, it's a failure of chemistry. You are living in a world held hostage by mud, soot, and vegetables. Your entire decorative palette is dictated by what can be dug out of the ground, boiled in a pot, or scraped from the inside of a chimney. Let's dissect this sad rainbow, shall we? The browns, yellows, and murky reds that adorn your walls are what artists call earth pigments. This is a fancy term for dirt. You have ochre, sienna, and umber, which are all just slightly different shades of clay and iron oxide. Congratulations! You've managed to decorate your home with the sophisticated essence of rust. For a touch of drama, you might have a room painted in a deep, brooding grey. This daring shade is achieved with soot, painstakingly collected and mixed with a binder. You've essentially painted your walls with the ghost of last winter's fire. It's not just a colour, it's a constant, gloomy reminder of the cold. What about the more vibrant colours? Those are the stuff of legend, reserved for kings, cardinals, and people who don't have to worry about the price of bread. A true, brilliant red often came from cochineal, a dye made from thousands upon thousands of crushed beetles. A deep, royal blue was derived from lapis lazuli, a semi-precious stone that had to be mined in faraway lands, and was, ounce for ounce, more valuable than gold. To have a blue room in the 19th century was the equivalent of having a garage with a solid gold car in it. It was an audacious, almost obscene declaration of wealth. For you, in the striving middle class, such colours are a distant dream, something you might glimpse in a church window or on the dress of a duchess, but never on your own walls. Even the greens of your era are a disappointment. They are watery, swamp-like hues derived from buckthorn berries or other plant matter. They have all the vibrancy of pond scum and, worse still, they are traitors. This is the second great tyranny you face, the tyranny of the Sunday. The natural, organic dyes that colour your world are fundamentally unstable. They fade. That expensive new calico dress with the charming sprig pattern, give it one good summer and it will look like a washed-out ghost of its former self. The wallpaper you splurged on for the guest room, the one with the pale green ivy motif, every ray of sunlight that streams through the window is a tiny dagger, slowly murdering the colour, bleaching it into a sad, yellowish-grey memory. Let's take a tour of your respectable, deeply unsatisfying home. The parlour, your public face, is papered in a brown damask pattern, so subtle you can only see it if you squint. The horsehair sofa is a grim, unforgiving black, designed for perching uncomfortably, not for relaxing. In the dining room, dark, heavy mahogany furniture dominates. The walls are a deep ochre, a colour that valiantly tries to be warm and cheerful, but instead succeeds only in absorbing all the light and joy from the room. It's like eating every meal inside a giant block of mustard. In your bedroom, the linens are a faded floral print, the roses looking less like they're blooming and more like they're giving up. The walls are painted in a shade that can only be described as dusty, even immediately after they've been cleaned. This is your sanctuary. It's no wonder you suffer from melancholy. You see true colour only when you leave your home. You see it on the uniforms of soldiers dyed with expensive crimson. You see it in the stained glass windows of the cathedral, where saints bleed ruby red and the Virgin Mary weeps sapphire blue. Colour, you realise, is a language of power. It signifies wealth, piety, and a station in life so far above your own that it feels like another world. The aristocracy doesn't have to live with the colour of dirt. Their lives are a vibrant tapestry of imported dyes and precious pigments, a constant visual reminder of their superiority. Their world is a jewel box. Yours is a mud puddle. This quiet, colourful apartheid fuels your ambition and deepens your sense of inadequacy. This constant sensory deprivation has a psychological effect. It creates a hunger, a deep, primal craving for something more, for a jolt of colour that can break through the monotonous gloom. You find yourself staring a little too long at the bright ribbons on a lady's bonnet, or the unnatural hues of penny sweets in a jar. You dream of rooms that aren't brown, of a world that doesn't look like it's been steeped in weak tea. This desire isn't just a frivolous whim. It feels like a biological need, like a plant leaning toward a sliver of light in a dark room. You are starved for hue, and this starvation makes you vulnerable. It makes you ready for a revolution. And then, the first whispers begin. Rumours from the continent, brought back by travellers and printed in scientific journals, talk of new discoveries in chemistry, of colours created not from the earth, but in a laboratory, colours derived from coal tar, from metals, from poisons. They say these new colours are different. They are brilliant, consistent, and, most miraculously of all, they do not fade. They are eternal. You see a small sample in a textile merchant's shop window, a swatch of fabric dyed a green so bright, so alive, it seems to hum with energy. It makes every other colour on the street look dead by comparison. It's the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. It's the colour of envy, of life, of possibility. And you know with a certainty that settles deep in your bones that you must have it. You don't know what it's made of, and you don't care. The long, drab years are over. Colour is coming. And so, you wait. You and the rest of the civilized world are trapped in a 50-year winter of brown, collectively starving for a spring of color that seems like it will never arrive. The world is primed for a miracle, desperate for a savior to deliver it from the tyranny of taste and the oppression of ochre. A hero is needed. What the world gets, however, is a Swedish pharmacist with a questionable sense of self-preservation. Enter our man of the hour, Carl Wilhelm Scheele. Born in 1742, Scheele was a quiet, unassuming genius, a man so brilliant that he discovered at least 7 different chemical elements, including oxygen, though he was so slow to publish his findings that others usually got the credit. He was the perpetual underdog of 18th century chemistry, a man who could isolate the building blocks of the universe but couldn't seem to find a good publicist. He also had one particularly peculiar habit. He liked to taste his discoveries. In an age before safety labels and hazmat suits, Scheele believed the best way to understand a new compound was to get intimately acquainted with it via his tongue and nose. He described the taste of hydrogen cyanide, a famously fast-acting poison, as having a taste which borders on sweet. This is the man who is about to answer your prayers for a better living room. A man whose dedication to science was matched only by his apparent death wish. Imagine the scene. It's 1775. We're in Scheele's apothecary in the small Swedish town of Köping. It's a dimly lit, cluttered space that smells of bitter herbs, sour chemicals, and intellectual ferment. Glass retorts bubble over gentle flames, and strange crystalline powders are neatly arranged in unlabeled jars. Scheele isn't trying to change the world of interior design. He's probably just trying to create a better, cheaper green for paints or dyes. He starts with a solution of copper sulfate, a common and reasonably safe bluish compound. Then he introduces his secret ingredient. In a heated pot, he dissolves a white, unassuming powder, arsenic acid, also known as arsenic trioxide. This is the king of poisons, the preferred choice of scheming Borgias and disgruntled heirs for centuries. It's cheap, effective, and notoriously difficult to detect. Scheele gently combines the two solutions. There is no lightning flash, no clap of thunder, just a quiet, chemical miracle. A new substance begins to precipitate, to fall out of the solution as a fine, solid powder. And the color? My God, the color. It is a green unlike any seen before on Earth. It is not the sad, swampy green of boiled plants, nor the muted, dusty green of earth pigments. This is a green that is shockingly, aggressively alive. It is a vibrant, electric, luminous shade that seems to generate its own light. It's the color of new spring leaves, of fairy tale forests, of mythical jewels. It is pure, concentrated beauty. Scheele filters the powder, dries it, and examines the result. He has done it. He has created the perfect green. He names the compound after himself, calling it Scheele's Green. It is his masterpiece, a beautiful, brilliant, and profoundly toxic baby. To understand why this color was so revolutionary, you have to understand the science, which is actually quite simple. The stunning vibrancy of Scheele's Green comes directly from the arsenic. The compound, copper arsenite, has a unique crystalline structure that reflects light in a way that is intensely stimulating to the human eye. The arsenic isn't an impurity, it's the active ingredient. It's what makes the color pop. He had essentially weaponized beauty. You take a common metal, copper, you introduce it to a notorious poison, arsenic. And the result is a partnership that creates a visual experience so powerful it overwhelms the senses and, as it would turn out, the internal organs. It was a Faustian bargain struck in a beaker. In exchange for this supernatural beauty, the pigment demanded a small toxic price from anyone who got too close. But the true genius of Scheele's Green wasn't just its looks, it was its price tag. This brilliant supernatural green was shockingly cheap to produce. The ingredients were common, and the process was simple. For the first time in history, a vibrant, permanent color was not the exclusive property of the ultra-rich. It was democratized. You, a respectable but not royal member of the middle class, could now afford a color that didn't look like mud. You could paint your walls in a shade that previously only a king could command. The promise was irresistible. You just had to be willing to overlook the fact that your stunning new paint was made from the same stuff used to kill rats. And unlike the treacherous vegetable dyes of the past, this color was loyal. It was permanent. It didn't fade in the sunday, it didn't wash out in the rain. It stared right back at the forces of nature and won. Its chemical stability was one of its most celebrated qualities, a symbol of the new industrial age. This persistence was, of course, also the source of its slow, patient lethality. The arsenic wasn't going anywhere. It was chemically bonded into the paint, the wallpaper, the fabric, a silent, beautiful, and permanent houseguest. The first victims weren't the homeowners, but the workers. In the factories and workshops where Scheele's green was ground into powder and mixed into paints and papers, the air filled with a fine, shimmering green dust. It settled on the workers' skin, got into their food, and lined their lungs. They complained of sores that wouldn't heal, of constant nausea, of convulsions and weakness. The factory owners dismissed it as the usual cost of industrial progress. The workers, beautiful and shimmering with the green dust on their clothes and in their hair, looked like tragic wood sprites, slowly being poisoned by the very magic they were creating. Their suffering was just the quiet, unwritten warning label on a product the world was about to fall in love with. The green messiah had arrived, born of poison and genius, ready to be sold. And you, with your dull brown walls and your desperate craving for color, are about to become its most devoted disciple. A miracle has been born in a laboratory, but a miracle is useless if it stays in a jar. A Messiah needs followers, a gospel, and a grand stage to perform the first of its wonders. The beautiful, toxic green pigment created by Scheele was a chemical solution waiting for a human problem. And the perfect stage for its debut was about to be built, a magnificent cathedral of glass and iron dedicated to the new religion of the 19th century progress. Enter the Great Exhibition of 1851. This wasn't just a fair. It was the world's first global press conference for the Industrial Revolution, a spectacular marketing event designed to create a level of consumer desire the world had never known. Held in London's Hyde Park, the exhibition was housed in a structure so vast and new it was immediately nicknamed the Crystal Palace. It was a building made almost entirely of glass, a shimmering testament to what iron, ingenuity, and a colossal budget could achieve. For you, a member of the color-starved middle class, stepping inside was like entering a different dimension. The sheer scale of it, the way the sunlight streamed through the acres of glass, the roar of the crowd, and the hum of machinery, it was intoxicating, overwhelming, and deliberately designed to make your current life feel inadequate. This was the temple where the gods of industry displayed their new creations. You wander through the halls in a state of awe, past colossal steam engines chugging away like iron beasts, past the miraculous new telegraph machine that could send messages through a wire, past looms that could weave more cloth in an hour than a person could in a lifetime. Everything is a marvel. Everything screams of the future. And then you see it. Tucked within the Austrian section is a display that stops you in your tracks. It's a room, perfectly decorated, and every part of it is bathed in that brilliant, impossible green. The walls are covered in a paper of the most exquisite design, a cascade of green ferns and flowers, so vibrant they look like they might have been picked that morning. A mannequin in the corner is draped in a ball gown of the same electric shade, its silk shimmering under the glass roof. There are green ribbons, green candles, even a set of green-painted wooden toys arranged in a charming little nursery scene. The display is a masterclass in seduction. It doesn't just show you a color, it shows you a life that is brighter, richer, more modern, and infinitely more fashionable than your own. You are not just looking at a pigment, you are looking at the answer to your prayers, the secret weapon that will finally defeat Mrs. Abernathy and secure your place in the social hierarchy. You leave the Crystal Palace a changed person. You are no longer just a consumer, you are a convert. The Great Exhibition lit the match, and a full-blown marketing blitz fanned the flames. The gospel of green spread with a speed that would make a modern influencer jealous. Ladies' magazines, those powerful arbiters of taste, began to feature illustrations of rooms and outfits dominated by the new colour. Godey's, Lady's Book and other publications ran breathless articles praising the novel and lively hue, calling it the very essence of spring and vitality. They never mentioned its chemical composition, of course. Arsenic wasn't a word that sold magazines. Instead, they used words like vibrant, fresh, and durable. Newspaper advertisements followed, promising to transform your dreary home into a verdant paradise. Wallpaper manufacturers competed to create the most intricate and desirable patterns, their sample books filled with page after page of green stripes, florals, and exotic birds. For the first time, you could order home decor from a catalogue, a curated menu of fashionable options delivered right to your door. The marketing was relentless, creating a powerful illusion. This wasn't just a purchase, it was a necessary upgrade to a better, more modern way of life. To reject the new green was to be old-fashioned, a Luddite, a person content to live in the drab brown past. The trend was cemented when it received the ultimate seal of approval, royalty. Empress Eugenie of France, the wife of Napoleon III and the undisputed fashion icon of Europe, fell in love with the colour. She wore arsenic green gowns to the most important state functions, and what the Empress wore, the entire continent copied. Suddenly, every woman with social aspirations needed a green dress. Ballrooms across London and Paris transformed into shimmering seas of arsenic silk. The colour became synonymous with high fashion, power, and daring sophistication. It was the colour of the moment, and no one wanted to be left behind. But the marketing machine didn't stop at the drawing room and the ballroom. Its reach was total, extending into the most intimate and vulnerable corners of your life. The same brilliant green pigment began to appear on children's toys. That charming wooden rocking horse, that set of painted blocks, that adorable dollhouse furniture, all coated in a lovely layer of lead and arsenic-laced paint. It was perfect for a child to chew on while teething. The logic was simple and chilling. If the colour was beautiful, it must be good. The concept of consumer safety did not exist. Even more horrifying was its infiltration of the food supply. Unscrupulous confectioners, wanting to make their sweets look more appealing, found that a pinch of Scheele's green gave their products a lovely minty colour. They mixed the arsenic-based pigment directly into candies, custards, and frosted cakes. After all, it was far cheaper than any food-based colouring. You might buy a bright green treat for your child from a street vendor, believing it to be a harmless indulgence, a splash of colour to brighten their day, never knowing you were feeding them a beautifully decorated dose of poison. The blitz was complete. The homicidal green was no longer just a product, it was an integral part of the culture. It was in your home, in your clothes, in your children's hands, and on your tongue. The seduction was total, and you, along with millions of others, embraced it without question. You were ready to bring the beautiful poison home. The decision is made. You have endured the quiet tyranny of brown for long enough. You've counted your shillings, steeled your nerves, and rehearsed your order. Today is not just another Tuesday. It is the day you declare war on mediocrity. Your mission is simple: to acquire the most beautiful, most fashionable, and most intimidating wallpaper that money can buy. This is not just redecorating. This is a military campaign, and you are its commanding general. You summon the carriage, your heart beating with a mixture of terror and exhilarating purpose. Today, you will finally buy the weapon that will end the neighborhood Cold War once and for all. The journey takes you to one of London's finest shopping streets, a bustling artery of commerce where the wealthy and the aspiring to be wealthy come to purchase their identities. You step out of the carriage and stand before the shop. It doesn't have a gaudy sign. It has a discreet, polished brass plaque with the proprietor's name in elegant script. The windows display not a jumble of goods, but a single perfectly upholstered chair and a bolt of expensive silk, an understated promise of the quality within. This is not a place for casual browsing. This is a temple of taste, and you are here to worship. Taking a deep breath, you push open the heavy oak door. A small bell chimes your arrival. The air inside is still and cool, smelling of beeswax, expensive leather, and the crisp, clean scent of high-quality paper. The proprietor, a man with silver hair and a suit so perfectly tailored it seems to have grown on him, emerges from the back. He doesn't greet you with a salesperson's desperate smile, but with the quiet, appraising look of a museum curator. He knows you are not here to waste his time. You are here to make a statement, and his job is to provide you with the vocabulary. You state your purpose. You wish to see his finest wallpapers, specifically those in the new Parisian green. A flicker of understanding crosses his face. He knows exactly what you want. He doesn't lead you to a stack of sample books. Instead, he gestures toward a series of tall, freestanding panels, each displaying a different pattern like a priceless work of art. "A most excellent choice, madam," he murmurs, his voice smooth as velvet, the color of the moment, the very soul of modernity. He begins the ritual. With a dramatic flourish, he unfurls the first roll. The paper is thick and heavy, a sign of its quality. The design is a breathtaking cascade of ferns, each frond and leaflet rendered in exquisite detail. This is a direct appeal to the pterodomania, or fern fever, that has swept the nation, the obsessive collecting and cataloguing of ferns. The pattern is not just decorative, it's scientific, it's intellectual. The green is deep and lush, so lifelike you feel you could be stepping into a misty, prehistoric forest. It's an escape, a piece of wild, untamed nature brought into your stuffy London parlour. You imagine Mrs. Abernathy seeing it, forced to concede that your taste is not only fashionable but also intellectually robust. Next, he reveals a pattern of exotic birds. Brilliant green parrots and birds of paradise are perched among impossible, fantastical flowers. This design taps into the Victorian fascination with exploration and empire. It speaks of distant lands, of adventure, of a world far beyond the foggy confines of England. To have this on your walls would be to announce that you are a person of global awareness, a connoisseur of the exotic. The bird's plumage shimmers with that same intoxicating luminous green, a color that seems to have been imported directly from a jungle paradise. It is bold, exciting, and just a little bit dangerous. Then comes a more severe, more sophisticated option, a complex geometric pattern, an interlocking trellis of green leaves and abstract floral shapes, the kind championed by design reformers like Owen Jones or the precursors to the arts and crafts movement. This is not a wallpaper for the frivolous. This is for the serious decorator, the person who understands the mathematical principles of beauty. It is orderly, mesmerizing, and deeply impressive. It doesn't scream for attention, it commands it. Its beauty is in its intellectual rigor, a testament to your refined and disciplined mind. With each new pattern, your resolve deepens. The sheer beauty is overwhelming. The green is the star of every show, a color so rich and multifaceted it seems to contain its own light source. You ask the proprietor about its durability. "Ah," he says with a knowing smile, "that is the marvel of modern chemistry. Unlike the vegetable dyes of old, this color will not fade. It is as permanent as your good taste, madam." He says nothing of arsenic, of course. Why would he? He is selling a dream, not a chemical formula. You notice a faint, sharp, almost metallic smell emanating from the paper, but you dismiss it. It is the smell of newness, the smell of progress. The final choice is an agony of desire. The ferns are beautiful, the birds are daring, the geometrics are intelligent. But you are not here for beautiful, daring, or intelligent. You are here for victory. You ask to see his most opulent pattern, the one reserved for his most discerning clients. The proprietor allows a genuine smile to grace his lips. He disappears into the back and returns with a roll wrapped in soft cloth, handling it like a holy relic. He unfurls it on the long wooden table. You gasp. It is a masterpiece. A dense, luxurious tapestry of large, trailing peacock feathers, their eyes rendered in a shimmering bronze and a deep, hypnotic blue, all set against a background of the most brilliant, breathtaking Scheele's green imaginable. It is audacious, decadent, and staggeringly expensive. It is, in a word, perfect. It is a wallpaper that doesn't just decorate a room, it conquers it. This is not a pattern Mrs. Abernathy can compete with. This is a checkmate. I'll take it, you say, your voice barely a whisper. You don't ask for the price per roll again. To do so would be common. You know it will consume your savings for the next year, but it doesn't matter. This is an investment in your future, in your happiness, in your social survival. The proprietor nods, calculates the amount needed for your parlor, and presents the bill. You count out the money with a hand that trembles only slightly. The transaction is complete. You have done it. The rolls are carefully wrapped in brown paper and tied with string, ready for the decorators. As you walk out of the shop and back into the grey London street, you feel a profound sense of triumph. You have just purchased the most beautiful thing you have ever owned. You are bringing a masterpiece home, entirely unaware that you have also just signed your family's beautifully decorated death warrant. The decorators arrive like a small, disciplined army. For 3 days, your parlor is a no-go zone, a sacred space undergoing a holy transformation. You banish your husband and children to other parts of the house, and the servants are instructed to deliver tea and biscuits to the workmen with a reverence usually reserved for visiting clergy. The house is filled with the unfamiliar smells of gluey wallpaper paste, and the faint, sharp tang of the paper itself, a scent you decide is the smell of progress. You endure the disruption with the patience of a saint, because you know that on the other side of this chaos lies your promised land, a room so magnificent it will render your entire social circle speechless. When the head decorator finally knocks on your door and declares the work complete, your heart pounds in your chest. You walk down the hallway, take a steadying breath, and push open the parlor door. The sight that greets you stops you in your tracks. It is more glorious than you could have ever imagined. The room is no longer a room. It is an enchanted grotto, a jeweled box, a masterpiece. The peacock feather wallpaper is a symphony in green. The color is so vibrant, so impossibly lush, it seems to breathe, making the very air in the room feel richer, more alive. The intricate details of the feathers, the shimmering bronze and deep blue eyes, catch the light from the windows, creating a mesmerizing, opulent effect. It is a room that is not just decorated but curated. It is a work of art, and you are its patron. You spend a full hour in there alone, walking from wall to wall, tracing the patterns with your fingertips, basking in the sheer, unadulterated beauty of it all. But a masterpiece is meaningless without an audience. A victory is not a victory until your enemies have surrendered. It is time to plan the unveiling. This will not be a casual gathering. This will be a meticulously orchestrated event, a strategic masterstroke designed to showcase your triumph. You sit at your writing desk and draw up the guest list. All the usual suspects: Of course, the wives of your husband's business partners, your own circle of friends, and a few lesser families you need to keep in your social orbit. And then, the most important name of all, Mrs. Abernathy. You write her invitation with a particularly gleeful flourish of your pen. The menu is planned with equal care. The finest tea, the most delicate sandwiches, and a selection of cakes that are impressive but not so extravagant as to suggest you are trying too hard. Every detail is a calculated move in the game. The day of the party arrives. The house is a hive of activity. The silver has been polished to a blinding sheen, the floors are immaculate, and the tea service is laid out with geometric precision. You dress in a gown of a tasteful, muted lavender, a colour chosen specifically so as not to compete with the magnificent green of the parlour. You are the curator, not the main exhibit. As the hour approaches, you stand in the centre of your new room, a general surveying her battlefield before the engagement begins. You are nervous, but it is the thrilling nervousness of an actor on opening night who knows they are about to give the performance of their life. The first guests arrive. Their polite chatter fills the hallway as the maid takes their coats. Then, she ushers them towards the parlour. The moment of truth. The first woman to step through the door, a Mrs. Pringle, literally stops mid-sentence. Her mouth hangs open for a fraction of a second before she composes herself. A stunned silence falls over the group as they take in the room. It is precisely the reaction you had prayed for. Then comes the flurry of carefully coded compliments, a symphony of polite envy. "Oh, my dear," Mrs. Pringle says, fanning herself lightly, "it is so very bold. One must be terribly brave to commit to such a powerful statement. The subtext is clear, it's gaudy, and you are dangerously close to being considered eccentric." You smile graciously. Another guest, a younger woman known for her artistic pretensions, examines the pattern up close. "The detail is simply astonishing," she says. "Wherever did you find such a unique design? I don't believe I've seen it in any of the more common catalogues." She is trying to ascertain if your wallpaper is fashionably exclusive or just bizarrely obscure. You simply reply, "One has one's sources," and offer her a cup of tea. They circle the room, their eyes darting everywhere, unable to stop looking at the walls. They are captivated, and they hate it. The poisonous wallpaper is working its first magic trick perfectly. It is making everyone else feel insecure about their own drab brown homes. The party is in full swing when she finally arrives. The air seems to chill slightly as the maid announces, "Mrs. Abernathy, your final boss has entered the arena." She glides into the room with an air of regal authority, her smile a perfect, condescending crescent. Her eyes, however, betray her. They widen almost imperceptibly as she takes in the sheer, overwhelming greenness of your parlour. For a moment, a single, glorious moment, she is speechless. She recovers quickly, of course. Her training is too good for that. "My dear," she says, her voice like honey laced with frost, "you have certainly been busy." She begins her inspection, a slow, deliberate circuit of the room. She examines the seams where the paper meets, searching for any sign of shoddy workmanship. There is none. She squints at the peacock feathers, looking for any imperfection in the printing. There is none. She even comments on the way the light reflects off the pigment. It has such a particular sheen to it, a very modern effect. She cannot find a single flaw to latch onto, no mistake in taste or execution she can use to reassert her dominance. She is defeated, and she knows it. She finally turns to you, her face a mask of polite composure. "It is quite an accomplishment," she concedes. And with those 3 words, you know you have won. The war is over. The rest of the afternoon is a blur of triumph. The tea is poured, the cakes are eaten, and the conversation flows, but all of it happens in the shadow of the magnificent, victorious walls. When the last guest has departed, you close the parlour door and lean against it, a wave of pure, unadulterated bliss washing over you. You are alone in your masterpiece. The air is still, thick with the lingering scent of perfume, tea, and something else. That faint, sharp, chemical smell of the paper itself. You breathe it in deeply. It is the smell of victory. The cost was enormous. The anxiety was unbearable. But in this moment, it all feels completely, utterly worth it. Your social victory is complete. Your parlor is a triumph, a monument to your impeccable taste. You feel validated, secure in the knowledge that you have chosen not just a beautiful design, but the correct one. And in the 19th century, the highest authority on all things correct, beautiful, and tasteful is one man, William Morris. His name is a seal of approval, a guarantee of artistic and moral superiority. To own a piece of his work is to prove that you are not just fashionable, but a true connoisseur. And as it happens, the brilliant green pigments shimmering on your walls are the very same ones used by the master himself. This thought is a comfort, a final, reassuring justification for your extravagant purchase. You are not just a follower of trends, you are a disciple of the greatest style influencer of the age. Let's talk about William Morris. To understand the man is to understand the grand, tragicomic paradox at the heart of your beautiful, poisonous home. Morris was more than just a designer. He was a prophet, a poet, a social reformer with a magnificent beard and an even more magnificent sense of purpose. He was the founder and guiding spirit of the arts and crafts movement, a crusade against the very industrial world that had made your wallpaper possible. Morris looked at the cheap, ugly, mass-produced goods pouring out of the factories, the shoddy furniture, the garish textiles, and saw not progress, but a spiritual sickness. He believed the factory system was destroying not only beauty, but also human dignity, turning skilled craftspeople into mindless machine operators. His solution was a return to the past, to a romanticized medieval ideal of craftsmanship. He preached a gospel of beauty rooted in nature, simplicity, and the honest work of human hands. His famous motto was, "Have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful, or believe to be beautiful." This was a revolutionary idea in an age of cluttered, sentimental excess. He founded his company Morris & Co. in 1861, not just to sell products, but to change the world. He envisioned a utopian workshop where artisans would collaborate, taking pride in their craft and creating objects that were both beautiful and made to last. He designed some of the most iconic patterns of all time: the Strawberry Thief, a charming design of thrushes stealing fruit; the acanthus, a swirling dramatic pattern of leaves; the jasmine trellis, inspired by the garden at his own red house. His designs were a celebration of the English countryside, intricate, harmonious, and deeply, profoundly beautiful. And here is the grand, spectacular, and deeply inconvenient irony. This prophet of natural, wholesome beauty, this crusader against the evils of industrial pollution, was one of the biggest producers and most stubborn defenders of arsenic-laced wallpaper in England. His company, the standard-bearer for quality and artistic integrity, used Scheele's green and the even more toxic Paris green with enthusiastic abandon. Some of his most famous and beloved designs were saturated with the stuff. The very man who told you to only have beautiful and useful things in your home was selling you a product that was undeniably beautiful, but whose primary use was slowly poisoning you and your family. As the years went on and the 1,870 seconds rolled around, the whispers about arsenical papers grew into a roar. Doctors began publishing papers, newspapers ran cautionary tales, and customers started connecting the dots between their new, fashionable wallpaper and their mysterious, lingering illnesses. Naturally, people looked to the most famous wallpaper manufacturer in the country. Letters were written, concerns were raised. One client wrote to Morris & Co., complaining that the paper in his bedroom was making him sick. The company's response was a masterclass in corporate deflection. They essentially told him to see a doctor about his gouty diathesis, a vague, catch-all term for general ill health. William Morris himself was personally aware of the accusations, and his reaction was not one of concerned investigation, but of profound, arrogant annoyance. He saw the growing public health campaign not as a legitimate scientific concern, but as an attack on his professional judgment by a bunch of quack doctors and hysterical customers. In a letter, he famously dismissed the entire controversy as a silly fuss. When a friend asked him about the supposed dangers, Morris is reported to have brushed it off, saying that the arsenic was so minimal that a person would have to lick a great deal of it off the walls to be affected. His most revealing and damning defense came when he was questioned directly about the issue. He argued that the doctors raising the alarm were merely self-interested fools, trying to drum up business for themselves. He declared that the whole affair was a sham, for the doctors were bitten as people were bitten by the witch fever. In his mind, the scientific evidence was no different from medieval superstition. It's the 19th century equivalent of a wellness influencer selling a detox tea that's actually a powerful laxative, and then, when customers complain about violent stomach cramps, blaming their negative energy and accusing doctors of being shills for Big Pharma. Why the denial? Why would this man of principle, this socialist idealist who dreamed of a better world, so stubbornly defend a poison? The answer, as always, is complicated and deeply cynical. First, there was money. The arsenic pigments were cheap, easy to use, and produced the most brilliant, stable colors. To switch to non-arsenic alternatives would have been expensive and time-consuming, requiring a complete overhaul of their production methods. His socialist ideals about making beauty accessible to the masses apparently stopped when they started to affect his company's bottom line. Second, there was ego. William Morris was the undisputed king of design. He was an artist, a visionary. The idea that a bunch of doctors, men he considered unartistic, uncultured hacks, could tell him that his beautiful creations were harmful was an insult to his expertise. He couldn't or wouldn't believe that a substance could be both aesthetically perfect and medically dangerous. In his worldview, beauty and truth were one and the same. His wallpaper was beautiful, therefore it must be good. The logic was simple, elegant, and lethally flawed. For years, Morris and his company continued to manufacture and sell the poisonous papers, even as the evidence mounted and competitors began advertising their own arsenic-free designs. It wasn't until the 1,880 seconds, after decades of public debate and undeniable scientific proof, that Morris & Co. finally, quietly, phased out the use of arsenic pigments. There was no grand public apology, no admission of error. The change was a reluctant business decision, not a moral awakening. The market had finally turned against the poison, and even the great William Morris had to follow the money. So, as you sit in your magnificent parlor, admiring the peacock feathers shimmering on your walls, you can rest assured, your taste is not just fashionable, it is backed by the highest authority in the land. Your beautiful, toxic wallpaper has the seal of approval from a celebrated idealist, a man who believed in art, nature, and craftsmanship, and who was willing to overlook a little bit of poison in pursuit of the perfect shade of green. For the first few weeks, you are living in a state of unparalleled bliss. The honeymoon with your new drawing room is intoxicating. You invent reasons to be in there, moving your reading chair so it catches the morning light, just to see the way the sun illuminates the brilliant green of the walls. You host a series of small, strategic tea parties, savoring the waves of envy that ripple through your social circle. Your victory is total. Mrs. Abernathy has been seen purchasing new curtains, a clear admission of defeat. You have ascended to a new level of social grace, and your home is the talk of the neighborhood. The sheer, unrelenting beauty of the room is a daily source of joy. You breathe it in, letting the color fill your senses. It is the best decision you have ever made. Then, the first unwelcome guest arrives, and it doesn't use the front door. It's a headache. It's nothing dramatic, not a skull-splitting migraine that sends you to a darkened room, but a dull, persistent, nagging ache that settles behind your eyes like a fog. At first, you dismiss it as the natural consequence of your busy life. The stress of managing a household, the strain of all that needlepoint, the endless calculations in the account books, it's only natural that you should feel a little tired. Perhaps, you think, the new gas lamps you had installed are a bit too bright. They are a modern marvel, of course, but one's eyes must adjust. You make a mental note to wear your spectacles more often and think nothing more of it. But the headache doesn't leave. It becomes your constant, unwelcome companion. It is there when you wake up, and it is there when you go to bed. And soon you are not the only one suffering from a mysterious malaise. You notice a change in the children. Your energetic, boisterous son has become quiet and listless. He picks at his food and prefers to lie on the rug rather than play with his toy soldiers. Your daughter, whose cheeks were once as pink as roses, now looks pale and perpetually tired. You chide them for their languor, telling them that a lack of vigor is a sign of a weak character. You dose them with foul-tasting tonics and instruct the nanny to take them on more brisk walks, convinced that what they need is more fresh air and moral fortitude. It never occurs to you that the air inside your own home might be the problem. The pattern begins to emerge, but your mind, so clever at navigating the complex rules of social etiquette, refuses to see it. The symptoms are always worse after you've spent a long evening in the drawing room. Last Tuesday, you hosted a small card party. The next morning, you awoke with a splitting headache and a roiling stomach. You later heard from a friend that Mrs. Pringle, who had been your card partner for 3 hours, was also feeling terribly unwell. You immediately blamed the cook. That fish pie, you announced to your husband, was clearly off. I shall have a stern word with her. The possibility that you and your guests were poisoned not by the food, but by the very room in which you were entertaining, is too monstrous, too absurd to even contemplate. And so begins your grand tour of rationalizations, a masterpiece of self-deception. You construct an elaborate fortress of excuses to protect the one thing you cannot bear to question: your perfect, beautiful wallpaper. The headache? It must be your corset. The maids are lacing it far too tightly these days in their pursuit of the fashionable new silhouette. The nausea? It is the infamous London fog, which has been particularly thick and yellow this season, seeping through the windows and upsetting your delicate constitution. The children's lethargy? It is simply the inevitable result of a flawed modern education system that overburdens their young minds and neglects the development of a robust physical character. You become a connoisseur of blame, a detective determined to find any culprit except the one staring you in the face. You blame the new coal delivery, insisting it must be of a poor quality, giving off noxious fumes. You blame the wine merchant for selling you a questionable batch of claret. You even blame your own nerves, deciding that the stress of maintaining your newfound social standing has given you a case of fashionable hysteria. You do everything but question the walls. To question the walls would be to admit that your grand victory was a catastrophic mistake. It would mean admitting that the fortune you spent, the envy you cultivated, the very foundation of your social triumph, was built on a beautiful, shimmering, toxic lie. Your mind refuses to make the leap. It is a form of madness, the willful ignorance of a person who has staked everything on a single, glorious roll of the dice and cannot bear to admit they may have lost. Meanwhile, there is new physical evidence, which you diligently misinterpret. A fine, shimmering green powder begins to appear, settling like a faint frost on the dark wood of the mantelpiece, on the tables, on the covers of the books you leave out for display. You are not alarmed, you are annoyed. This new paper seems to shed a great deal, you complain to your maid. It creates so much dust. You instruct her to dust the parlour twice a day, treating the beautiful, toxic residue as a simple housekeeping problem. The maid, whose own hands are beginning to develop painful red sores, does as she is told. You watch the sunbeams stream into the room, illuminating the floating particles. It's almost beautiful, like watching tiny green fairies dance in the air. You have no idea you are admiring a microscopic cloud of arsenic, a slow, patient poison settling on every surface, waiting to be inhaled, to be touched, to be absorbed. The honeymoon is definitively over. The small annoyances are piling up, but you remain a loyal, devoted spouse to your beautiful, deadly room. You sit there, nursing your headache with a cup of weak tea, and you look at the magnificent peacock feathers on the wall, and you feel nothing but pride. The headaches have become a permanent tenant in your skull. The children are now so pale and listless they resemble beautifully dressed ghosts, and a permanent, low-grade nausea has become your new normal. Your encyclopedia of excuses is running out of pages. The weather can't be blamed forever. The cook has been replaced twice to no effect, and you're starting to suspect that even the tightest corset in London couldn't be responsible for this much misery. After another night spent sleepless, listening to your husband's hacking cough echo from the guest room where he has taken to sleeping, you finally concede defeat. It is time to summon the doctor. This is not a decision taken lightly. A doctor's visit is a significant expense, a formal admission that the problem has escalated beyond the curative powers of beef tea and a brisk walk. It is also, you fear, an invitation for judgment. But the creeping dread has finally outweighed your desire to keep up appearances. And so, a message is sent, and a few hours later, the carriage of Dr. Alistair Finch arrives at your door. Dr. Finch is the very picture of 19th century medical authority. He is a large man, built like a well-stuffed armchair, with a magnificent frock coat, a waistcoat straining heroically at its buttons, and a top hat that he removes with the gravity of a bishop removing his mitre. He smells faintly of carbolic soap, expensive cigars, and unshakable self-confidence. He enters your home not as a consultant, but as a visiting monarch, here to pass judgment on the disorderly conduct of your internal organs. You, naturally, receive him in the parlour. It is your best room, the only appropriate place to receive a man of his stature. The irony that you are inviting him into the very heart of the problem is, for the moment, lost on you. The examination begins. "And how are we feeling today, madam?" He booms, his voice filling the room. He does not wait for an answer. He pulls out a large gold pocket watch and takes your wrist, his thumb pressing down with surprising force. He stares at the watch, his brow furrowed in deep concentration, as if your pulse is telling him a long and complicated story. You begin to detail your symptoms, the headaches, the nausea, the children's fatigue. You even venture to mention, "It all seems so much worse since we redecorated this room." Dr. Finch lets out a patronizing little chuckle. "My dear lady," he says, finally releasing your wrist. "A common fallacy. The female mind is highly suggestible. It forms associations where none exist. A new wallpaper, a change in the weather, a sensational novel all can provoke a state of nervous agitation." He asks to see your tongue. He peers into your eyes. He taps your chest with a thick finger. He moves around the room, not examining it for clues, but commanding it with his presence. He stands before your magnificent, shimmering green walls. "A bold choice," he remarks. "Very modern. Such vibrant colours can be rather stimulating. For a person of a delicate disposition, it could certainly prove overwhelming. The diagnosis is already forming, and it has nothing to do with chemistry and everything to do with your inherent weakness as a woman." After what feels like an eternity of silent judgment, he clears his throat to deliver his verdict. "It is a classic case, I'm afraid," he announces. "Your constitution has been aggravated by the noxious miasma that currently plagues our great city. Furthermore, your symptoms clearly point to a dangerous imbalance of the humours. He begins to lecture, a torrent of incomprehensible but impressive-sounding jargon. I detect an excess of black bile, leading to this state of melancholy and languor, compounded, of course, by a nervous disposition common to your sex, a condition we medical men refer to as hysteria. He says the word hysteria with a certain relish, as if it explains everything. It is the perfect diagnosis. It is vague, impossible to disprove, and places the blame squarely on you and your faulty female wiring. Now that the enemy has a name, it is time for the treatment. We must act decisively to restore balance, he declares, opening his black leather bag. First he produces a small, elegant lancet, but then seems to think better of it. No, he murmurs, for a case of this sensitivity, a gentler approach is required. He then brings out a large glass jar. Inside, a collection of dark, slug-like creatures writhe in the murky water. His trusty leeches. My little colleagues will soon draw out the corrupted humours, he explains cheerfully, as you stare in horror. The process is as humiliating as it is unpleasant. You are instructed to lie on your chaise lounge while the doctor, with the help of your terrified maid, applies several of the slimy creatures to your temples and the nape of your neck. You feel their tiny, sharp bites, followed by a strange, cold sucking sensation. You lie there, dizzy and disgusted, while your doctor hums a little tune and proudly announces that the treatment is working splendidly. After he removes the bloated leeches, he produces a small bottle filled with a dark, viscous liquid, a tonic of my own formulation, he says, a dose of this 3 times a day. It contains a small amount of mercury to purge the system and laudanum to calm the nerves. Finally, before he leaves, he delivers a stern lecture. You must avoid all forms of excitement, madam. No late-night parties, no sensational novels, and certainly no political discussions. Your mind is too fragile for such things. I recommend a diet of bland foods, gruel, boiled chicken, weak tea, and above all, you must apply yourself to your domestic duties with a cheerful and contented heart. An idle mind is the devil's workshop, and a hysterical woman is a burden to her husband. He packs his bag, pockets the exorbitant fee your husband pays him, and departs, leaving a trail of smug satisfaction in his wake. As your maid dabs at the bleeding bites on your neck, you are not angry. You are not skeptical. You are profoundly, deeply relieved. A man of science, an expert, has examined your case and found a reason for your suffering. It is your nerves, your humours, your weak female body. His diagnosis, as insulting and nonsensical as it is a wonderful gift, because it confirms what you so desperately wanted to believe. The wallpaper is innocent. The problem isn't your perfect, beautiful home. The problem is you. And now, thanks to Dr. Finch and his trusty leeches, you finally have a cure. You have become a model patient. You dutifully swallow the doctor's vile mercury-laced tonic 3 times a day, the metallic tang lingering on your tongue for hours. You submit to the weekly application of leeches, learning to dissociate from the cold, slimy sensation as they perform their grim work. You have given up sensational novels. You avoid all forms of excitement, and your diet is now a monotonous landscape of gruel and boiled vegetables. You have followed the esteemed Dr. Finch's instructions to the letter, and for your troubles, you have gotten progressively, terrifyingly worse. The slow burn of your mysterious illness has now ignited into a full-blown fire. The nagging headaches have intensified, becoming a constant throbbing pressure that makes coherent thought a luxury. The gentle nausea has graduated to sudden, violent episodes that leave you pale, trembling, and deeply humiliated. But there are new symptoms now, horrors that cannot be so easily dismissed or hidden. Small, angry red sores have begun to bloom across your arms and neck, itching and weeping with a stubborn persistence that no lotion or poultice can soothe. You have taken to wearing high-collared dresses and long sleeves, even indoors, turning your own body into another secret to be kept from the prying eyes of your neighbors. Your hair, once your pride and joy, has started to thin, coming away in alarming clumps in your hairbrush each morning. A persistent, unpleasant metallic taste has taken up residence in your mouth, making even the blandest food taste like old pennies. The children are no better. Their skin has taken on a waxy, almost translucent quality, and their once boundless energy has been replaced by a profound and worrying exhaustion. You are all slowly, inexplicably, falling apart. Dr. Finch, on his follow-up visits, simply shakes his head, mutters something about a particularly stubborn humoral imbalance, prescribes more leeches, and doubles the price of his tonic. You are beginning to suspect that Dr. Finch is an expensive idiot, but what you do not yet suspect is the true nature of the enemy you are facing. You have blamed your body, your nerves, the air, the food. You have blamed everything except the one constant in your suffering, the beautiful, silent, smiling walls of your drawing room. You see, the true villain of this story isn't a single entity, it's a conspiracy. A toxic partnership between your fashionable wallpaper, the cheap, sugary paste holding it to the wall, and the one thing Britain has in endless, generous supply, damp. Let's dive into the science. Your house, like most Victorian houses, is a bit damp. The relentless English rain, the coal fires producing condensation, the lack of proper ventilation, it all creates a perfect environment for our second accomplice, a humble, everyday household mold. This microscopic organism, perhaps a species like Scopulariopsis brevicolis, is not inherently evil. It is just hungry. It loves nothing more than a nice humid surface with a starchy, sugary snack to feast on. And your wallpaper paste, made from simple flour and water, is a 5-star, all-you-can-eat gourmet buffet. So, the mold begins to grow, happily munching away on the paste behind your beautiful peacock feathers. But as it eats the paste, it also starts to ingest the pigment from the paper. Specifically, it starts to ingest the arsenic. Now, arsenic is just as toxic to mold as it is to you. To protect itself, the mold's digestive system performs a neat and tidy little chemical trick. It's a process called biomethylation. In simple terms, the mold takes the solid, inorganic arsenic it has eaten and attaches carbon and hydrogen atoms to it. This act of chemical self-defense transforms the arsenic from a stable solid into something new, something volatile, something gaseous. The result of this microscopic chemical warfare happening behind your wallpaper is the creation of a new compound, trimethylarsine. It is a colorless gas with a faint, garlic-like odor, an odor that is almost always masked by the other household smells of coal smoke, cooking, and perfume. And this gas is now being continuously, silently, and efficiently pumped into the air of your drawing room. The mold is, in effect, vaping arsenic. Every square inch of your magnificent wallpaper has become a tiny biological factory, converting a solid poison into an airborne one. Congratulations. Your damp, stylish home, the envy of the neighborhood, has become a tiny, slow-release chemical weapons factory. Every time you sit in your parlor to read, every time you host a tea party, every time the children play on the floor, you are all breathing in this invisible, poisonous gas. It's a slow, patient killer. Each breath is a microdose. The trimethylarsine enters your lungs, slips easily into your bloodstream, and begins its methodical tour of your body. It attacks the lining of your stomach, causing the violent nausea and cramps. It interferes with your cells' ability to repair themselves, leading to the skin sores and lesions. It damages your nerve endings, causing the headaches and, in time, a feeling of numbness in your fingers and toes. It is, quite literally, dismantling you from the inside out. The symptoms you are experiencing are not a result of a nervous disposition or an imbalance of the humors. They are the classic, textbook signs of chronic arsenic poisoning. One evening, as you sit in the parlor, the smell of your husband's cigar smoke failing to mask your own discomfort. You notice it for the first time. A faint, strange, garlicky smell in the air. You dismiss it, assuming it's something the cook is preparing for tomorrow's meal. But a tiny, cold seed of doubt is planted in your mind. A terrifying thought, a flicker of a connection so horrible you immediately try to extinguish it. Could it be the room? For a brief, dizzying moment, you see it all with a terrible clarity. The sickness started when the paper went up. The symptoms are always worse in here. The dust, the smell. But no, it's impossible. It's unthinkable. Dr. Finch is a man of science. He said it was your humours. To believe otherwise would be to admit a failure, a mistake, so colossal that your mind simply cannot bear the weight of it. You push the thought away, deep down into the dark, and blame the nausea on a bad batch of tea. You are trying so hard to believe in the cure. You are a woman of science now, a loyal disciple of Dr. Finch and his sophisticated understanding of the humours. When your husband complains of a crippling ache in his gut, you patiently explain that his black bile is clearly in excess due to the stresses of his work. When your maid, Mary, confesses that her hands are too swollen and sore to scrub the floors properly, you tell her that the lower classes are often susceptible to fits of melancholy and that she should pray for a more robust spirit. You have become a parrot, repeating the doctor's nonsensical diagnosis to anyone who will listen, because to stop repeating it would be to start thinking for yourself, and that is a terrifying prospect. But the poison is not interested in your theories. It is a quiet, indiscriminate evangelist, converting the healthy into the sick with relentless efficiency. The circle of suffering is expanding. Your husband, a man who prides himself on his cast-iron constitution and his ability to digest even the richest of steak and kidney pies, is now a shadow of his former self. He no longer spends his evenings in the magnificent parlour reading the paper. Instead, he retreats to his study, complaining of a constant churning nausea and a fatigue so profound that he falls asleep at his desk. He is a practical man, a man of ledgers and logic, and the concept of a nervous disposition is an insult to his very being. There is something foul in this house, he grumbles, waving away your talk of imbalanced humours. You dismiss his complaints as the typical grumbling of a man unaccustomed to even the slightest physical discomfort. The sickness seeps downstairs. Mary, your housemaid, is now in a truly pitiful state. The angry red sores that started on your arms have appeared on her hands and face with a vengeance. She has a constant, hacking cough, and her movements have become slow and feeble. Her primary duty is to dust the parlour, a task she now performs with a cloth wrapped around her face, not out of any scientific understanding, but because the faint, garlicky smell of the room makes her feel dizzy. You watch her work, her shoulders slumped, and feel a flicker not of compassion, but of annoyance. It is so difficult to find good, sturdy help these days. You make a mental note to speak with her about her malingering, convinced that her illness is just an elaborate ploy to get out of her duties. The thought that you are paying her a meagre wage to slowly poison herself on your behalf does not enter your mind. Then comes the first true death. It is Buster, your little terrier, a creature of boundless energy and unwavering loyalty. His favourite spot in the entire house is the plush new rug in the centre of the drawing room. He loves to sleep there, stretched out before the fire, soaking in the warmth. A few weeks ago, he started to sicken. He lost his appetite, his playful barks turned into pathetic whimpers, and he began to tremble uncontrollably. You summoned a man from the local stables, reputed to have a way with animals. He looked the dog over, shook his head, and admitted he had never seen anything like it. Last Tuesday, Buster had a violent convulsion on his beloved rug and died. You were heartbroken. You wept as the gardener buried him at the bottom of the garden. You and the children placed a small hand-painted stone on his grave. It was a tragic, inexplicable loss. A terrible piece of bad luck. You light a fire in the parlor that evening, the room feeling empty without the little dog curled on the floor, and you never once look at the beautiful shimmering walls and think of them as the murderer. The poison's reach now extends beyond your own front door. Your home, once the epicenter of the neighborhood's social life, is starting to acquire a reputation, and not a good one. You host a dinner party, desperate to maintain a sense of normalcy, to prove that your household is still a beacon of taste and hospitality. The evening is a triumph of denial. You feel terribly unwell, but you smile through the nausea, your charm a brittle shield against your own physical misery. The next day, however, the notes begin to arrive. Polite, carefully worded letters from your guests. "My dear," one reads, "thank you for a delightful evening. I must confess, however, that both my husband and I were struck down with a most peculiar stomach ailment upon our return home. We must have partaken of some disagreeable morsel. Another is more direct. I fear I shall have to decline your invitation for cards next week. I have not been myself since our last visit. The message is clear. An evening in your home now comes with a high price. The whispers start. You hear them from your maid, who hears them from the butcher's boy. People are talking. They say your house is unlucky, that it has a damp sickness in its walls. Mrs. Abernathy, you hear, has been telling people that your modern, flashy decor is unwholesome. Your grand social victory is curdling into a strange and lonely quarantine. You are the queen of a beautiful, perfect castle that no one wants to visit. The fortress of your denial is now under a full-scale assault from reality. The evidence is a relentless tide, battering against the walls of your willful ignorance. Your husband's groans, the maid's sores, the children's pale faces, the empty space on the rug where your dog used to sleep, the stack of polite refusal notes on your desk, it all screams a single, terrifying truth. But you cannot, will not, hear it. To do so would be to admit that you, in your quest for social perfection, have poisoned your entire family. The guilt would be unbearable. One evening, your husband confronts you. He finds you in the parlor, staring blankly at the walls, a half-empty bottle of Dr. Finch's useless tonic beside you. "This has gone on long enough," he says, his voice strained. "It is not my humors. It is not the cook. It is this room. We are never so sick as when we are in this room." You fly into a defensive rage. "How dare you?" you cry. "You sound like an ignorant peasant. Dr. Finch is a man of science. He has explained it all. It is a nervous contagion, aggravated by the miasma." You argue, your voices rising in the beautiful, silent room. You retreat behind the doctor's jargon, using his nonsense as a shield. But for the first time, it feels flimsy, inadequate. Your husband simply shakes his head and walks out, leaving you alone. The silence that descends is deafening. The joy your parlor once brought you has been replaced by a cold, creeping fear. You look at the shimmering peacock feathers, at the vibrant, luminous green, and for the first time you don't see beauty. You see a cage, and you are the one who locked the door. While you've been dutifully swallowing your mercury tonics and blaming your failing health on a weak disposition, a different kind of drama has been unfolding across London. Far from the quiet, desperate misery of your drawing room, in the gaslit laboratories and dusty lecture halls of the city, a few brave, stubborn men of science are starting to connect the dots. They are the polar opposite of the pompous Dr. Finch. They are not men of grand theories and condescending lectures. They are men of evidence, of observation, of the patient, unglamorous work of finding the truth, one test tube at a time. Meet our heroes, the first whistleblowers in this slow-motion disaster. Men like Dr. Henry Lethaby, an analytical chemist and public health officer with a sharp mind and an even sharper nose for public danger. Lethaby is not a society doctor. He does not make house calls to soothe the nerves of wealthy women. His patients are the public at large, and his job is to hunt down the invisible killers that lurk in the city's air, water, and, as he is about to discover, in its very homes. He and a handful of other physicians and chemists have noticed a disturbing pattern, a steady increase in patients presenting with a strange constellation of symptoms: chronic nausea, debilitating stomach cramps, weeping skin sores, and a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. The established medical community, men like your Dr. Finch, are quick to diagnose these cases as cholera, consumption, or, most conveniently, hysteria. But to Lethaby, these diagnoses feel lazy, inadequate. There is a pattern here, a common thread, if only he can find it. The investigation begins not with leeches but with legwork. Lethaby and his colleagues visit the homes of the afflicted. They are scientific detectives, mapping the outbreak. They speak to the families, take notes, and observe. In one home, a young, previously healthy couple is wasting away. In another, 3 children in one family have died in the space of 6 months. The common thread is not the water supply, nor the food, nor the local air quality. The common thread is aesthetic. In almost every single home where this mysterious illness has taken root, they find the same thing. A room, usually the drawing room or a bedroom, decorated in that breathtaking, impossibly vibrant shade of green. It starts as a hunch, a correlation that seems too strong to be a coincidence. Lethaby, a chemist first and foremost, knows that brilliant colors are often the product of harsh chemicals. He recalls the popular new pigment, Scheele's green, and he knows its primary ingredient. An idea, as brilliant as it is terrifying, begins to form in his mind. He needs a sample. He obtains one from the home of a family whose infant son has just died from violent convulsions, a death attributed by the family doctor to teething. The father, desperate for answers, gives Lethaby a strip of the beautiful green wallpaper from the nursery. Miles away from the quiet misery of that nursery, in a room dedicated not to sentiment but to science, Lethaby begins his work. His laboratory is the antithesis of your stylish, chaotic home. A place of order, of logic, of cold, hard facts. Rows of glass beakers and retorts line the shelves. The air smells of alcohol, acid, and the clean, sharp scent of discovery. This is where opinions and theories come to die, and where evidence is born. Lethaby takes the strip of wallpaper. He carefully, meticulously, scrapes the beautiful green pigment from the paper onto a clean porcelain dish. The shimmering powder, so lovely and innocuous on the wall, looks sinister under the harsh gaslight of the lab. He begins the test. It is a methodical, almost sacred ritual. He dissolves a small amount of the green powder in hydrochloric acid. He then performs what is known as the Marsh test, the gold standard for arsenic detection developed just a few decades prior. He introduces the solution into a flask with zinc and sulfuric acid, which will convert any arsenic present into arsine gas. He ignites the gas as it exits a glass tube. If arsenic is present, it will decompose in the heat and deposit a telltale, silvery black mirror of metallic arsenic on a cold piece of porcelain held in the flame. He holds the cold dish to the tiny jet of flame. Almost instantly, a dark, unmistakable stain appears. It is arsenic. His hunch was correct. But the real horror comes not from the confirmation, but from the quantity. Lethaby is a man of numbers, and he now performs the terrifying calculation. He carefully weighs a square foot of the wallpaper. Then, through a series of chemical processes, he isolates the total amount of arsenic it contains. He weighs the resulting poison and compares it to the known lethal dose for an adult human. The numbers he writes in his notebook are staggering. He checks his calculations, convinced he has made a mistake. He has not. A single square foot of this fashionable, desirable wallpaper contains, on average, 28 grains of arsenic. The lethal dose for an adult is estimated to be just 1 or 2 grains. Let's put that in perspective for you. The beautiful, peacock-feathered walls of your drawing room, the source of your social triumph, contain enough poison to kill every man, woman, and child on your street, and then the next street over. A single roll of this paper, sold cheaply and cheerfully in shops all over London, contains more poison than an apothecary would legally be allowed to keep on his premises. The nurseries of London, decorated in cheerful green patterns to soothe the children, are, in fact, beautifully appointed gas chambers. Letherby and his colleagues are horrified. They have uncovered a public health crisis of unimaginable scale, a murderer hiding in plain sight, welcomed into the very heart of the home. They do what any responsible scientist would do. They sound the alarm. They publish their findings in respected medical journals like The Lancet. They write letters to the Times. They present their evidence at medical conferences. They stand before their peers and declare, unequivocally, that the most popular home decor trend of the age is killing people. And the world, for the most part, yawns. The medical establishment, populated by men like Dr. Finch, is deeply skeptical. This newfangled chemistry is an affront to their centuries-old traditions of humours and miasmas. They dismiss Letherby as an alarmist, a radical. The wallpaper manufacturers, as we have seen with the great William Morris, launch a coordinated campaign of denial, calling the evidence a silly fuss and protecting their profits with a wall of corporate indifference. And you, the public, you don't read The Lancet. You read ladies' magazines that tell you green is the colour of the season. The truth is out there, printed in black and white in dense academic journals, but it has not yet reached you. The whistleblowers are shouting, but their voices are drowned out by the roar of industry, the rustle of commerce, and the proud, ignorant pronouncements of doctors who would rather bleed a patient than admit they don't know what they're doing. The truth, once discovered in the sterile, logical confines of Dr. Letherby's laboratory, did not immediately explode into public consciousness. In the 19th century, information travelled at the speed of a steam train, not a fibre-optic cable. The findings were first published in dense, academic journals like The Lancet, publications read only by doctors and scientists, most of whom, like your own Dr. Finch, were inclined to dismiss the findings as newfangled chemical nonsense. The secret of the green poison trickled out, seeping into the world not as a flood, but as a slow, creeping tide. For the truth to become a force of change, it needed a megaphone, and it was about to get 2 of the most powerful megaphones in the British Empire. The first was The Times. Known as the Thunderer for its influential and often booming editorials, it was the newspaper of record, the daily scripture for the respectable, educated classes. While you were still blaming your nausea on the cook, an ambitious young journalist at the paper got wind of Dr. Letherby's findings. He saw the story for what it was, a shocking public scandal hiding in plain sight. After weeks of interviews and research, the first article appeared, a bombshell dropped onto the breakfast tables of England. The headline was stark and terrifying. The poison in our parlours, a modern scourge, hiding in the guise of fashion. The article laid out the science in clear, simple terms, detailing Dr. Letherby's experiments and his horrifying calculations. It told the anonymous but heartbreaking stories of families wasting away from mysterious illnesses. It was a direct, frontal assault on the ignorance of the medical establishment and the indifference of the manufacturing industry. The effect was immediate. The newspaper office was inundated with letters, the 19th century equivalent of a comments section exploding. The letters to the editor page became the main arena for the debate. Heartbroken victims wrote in, their words a chorus of dawning horror. To the editor, one anonymous letter began, "Sir, with trembling hands I write to you. For 2 years my darling children have suffered from a malady that has baffled every physician. After reading your article on arsenical papers, I looked with dread upon the walls of my nursery. decorated in a cheerful pattern of green lambs. God forgive me. I believe I have discovered the source of their suffering. These letters were followed by angry, defensive screeds from wallpaper manufacturers, accusing the Times of sensationalism and of being in the pocket of rival French designers. Doctors of the old school, like Dr. Finch, wrote long, pompous letters about the time-tested wisdom of humoral theory and the dangers of this new hysterical chemical phobia. The public was captivated. The battle had been joined. If the Times provided the serious intellectual ammunition, the second megaphone delivered the killer blow through mockery. Enter Punch, the legendary satirical magazine. In an age of widespread but varying literacy, a powerful cartoon could be more devastating than the most eloquent editorial. A picture could be understood by everyone, from the lord in his manor to the clerk in his office. Punch specialized in taking the great issues of the day, politics, social climbing, public health, and deflating them with sharp, witty, and often brutal cartoons. When the Arsenic wallpaper scandal broke, it was a topic practically gift-wrapped for the magazine's artists. Imagine you are flipping through a new issue. You turn the page and are confronted with a full-page illustration, a masterpiece of macabre humor. The title is The Arsenic Waltz, or The Newest Dance Macabre. The drawing depicts a grand, beautifully appointed ballroom, the walls covered in an elegant green damask pattern, but the dancers are not the lords and ladies of London society. They are skeletons. A skeletal couple in fine evening dress waltzes gracefully in the center of the room. In one corner, a group of skeletal children plays happily with brightly painted green toys, and leaning against the mantelpiece, looking on with an air of smug satisfaction, is the Grim Reaper himself, his scythe resting against the wall as if he is taking a break because the wallpaper is doing all the work for him. The cartoon is a work of genius. It perfectly captures the horror of the situation by contrasting the elegant, fashionable setting with the ghastly reality of its consequences. The skeletons are not frightening. They are depicted as being just as fashionable and oblivious as the living people they represent. They are waltzing and playing, completely unaware that their own vanity has led them to this state. The caption underneath reads, "The advantage of the new arsenic-based wallpapers is that they allow one to decorate one's home and one's family to match in the most permanent fashion." It is a devastatingly funny and deeply chilling critique. It doesn't just present the facts. It mocks the very culture of status, seeking that made the tragedy possible. It tells you that your obsession with having the most fashionable parlor is, quite literally, a dance with death. This 1-2 punch of serious journalism from the Times and biting satire from Punch made the topic unavoidable. The secret was well and truly out. The information went viral, Victorian style. The poison papers became the subject of horrified whispers at every dinner party and tea gathering. Suddenly, everyone was an amateur chemist. People began peeling off small sections of their wallpaper and sending them to labs for testing. A cottage industry of paranoia springing up overnight. Your friends would visit and cast nervous, sideways glances at your magnificent green walls, their compliments now sounding strained and hollow. The end of your denial comes on a Tuesday morning. You are sitting at the breakfast table, trying to ignore the now familiar metallic taste in your mouth. You unfold your copy of the Times, and there it is. A follow-up article on the scandal. This one featuring a long letter from a physician detailing the specific symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning. You read the list, your blood turning to ice in your veins. Persistent headaches, violent nausea and gastric distress, weeping sores upon the skin, a progressive weakness and languor, a faint, garlicky odor in the affected rooms. It is not a diagnosis, it is a biography of your last 6 months. Every symptom, every misery you and your family have endured is laid out in cold black and white print. You drop the newspaper. The words blur before your eyes. You look up, your gaze traveling from the breakfast table, through the open doorway, and into your magnificent drawing room. The morning sun is streaming through the windows, catching the fine, shimmering green dust as it dances in the air. The beautiful peacock feathers on the wall seem to mock you, their bronze and blue eyes staring back with a cold, chemical indifference. The fortress of your denial, already weakened by the suffering of your family, is shattered into a million pieces by the undeniable authority of the printed word. It is real. It is not your nerves. It is not your humors. It is the wallpaper. The unmasking has begun. You are sitting alone in your drawing room. The breakfast things have been cleared away, but the copy of the Times remains on the small table beside you, lying there like a verdict. The house is quiet. The children are in the nursery, too listless to make much noise. Your husband has already left for the city, his face a grim mask of fatigue. The silence is a heavy, suffocating blanket. Your mind is a whirlwind, desperately trying to fight a war it has already lost. You pick up the newspaper again, your hands trembling slightly. You reread the article not in a linear fashion but in frantic, jagged snatches. Chronic gastric distress, cutaneous lesions, a progressive weakness. You scan the physician's letter again, searching for a loophole, a detail that doesn't match your own experience, a single sentence that will allow you to dismiss this all as a terrible coincidence. Your mind clings to the familiar, comforting nonsense of Dr. Finch. It's your humors. It's a nervous disposition. It is the natural, expected fragility of the female sex. It is anything but the walls. To admit the truth would be to admit a kind of monstrous negligence. It would mean that every compliment you received on this room was a lie, every moment of pride a symptom of a deadly vanity. It would mean that you, in your desperate, pathetic quest to impress Mrs. Abernathy, have decorated your home with death. No, it is simply not possible. The Times is a sensationalist rag. The doctors they quote are alarmists. The entire story is a fiction, a modern Gothic tale designed to frighten housewives and sell newspapers. You fold the paper decisively and place it aside. You will not allow your peace of mind to be disturbed by such trash. You lean back in your chair, taking a slow, calming breath. You look around the room, your masterpiece. You try to see it as you did before, a symbol of your triumph. You focus on the magnificent peacock feathers, on their intricate details, on the shimmering green. And that's when it happens. A single pure ray of late morning sun breaks through the London fog, angling through the tall window and cutting a brilliant golden path across the room. The beam illuminates the air itself, and you see them. You see the dust. It's not the dull, grey dust of a normal house. It is a cloud of tiny, glittering green particles, dancing and swirling in the sunbeam like a galaxy of malevolent emeralds. You have seen this dust before, of course. You have complained about it to your maid. You have wiped it from the mantelpiece. But you have never truly seen it until this moment. Now, with the words from the newspaper burning in your mind, you see it for what it is. It is not dust. It is pigment. It is the beautiful, vibrant, modern color that you fell in love with, pulverized into a fine, breathable powder. It is arsenic, floating in the very air your children breathe. The sight is a physical blow. The air is punched from your lungs. The last flimsy wall of your denial does not crumble. It explodes, vaporized in an instant of pure, undiluted horror. Your perception of the room flips, turning inside out like a ghastly magic trick. The beautiful wallpaper is no longer beautiful, it is monstrous. The elegant peacock feathers become 1,000 malevolent eyes, staring at you, judging you. The vibrant, life-giving green is suddenly the sickly, putrid green of decay, the color of poison, the color of gangrene. The room, once your sanctuary, has become your tomb, and you are the one who decorated it. Your mind floods with a montage of misery, each memory now recontextualized with this terrible new knowledge. You see Buster, your little dog, having his final convulsion on the rug, breathing in the glittering poison with every pained gasp. You see your son's pale, listless face, his eyes heavy with a fatigue that has nothing to do with childhood. You see your daughter's skin, once so perfect, now marred by the angry red sores you dismissed as a rash. You see your husband, his strong body weakened, clutching his stomach in the night. You see the polite, concerned faces of your dinner guests, all of them made ill by your hospitality. You see the slick, condescending smile of the shopkeeper who sold you this beautiful poison. You see the pompous, idiotic face of Dr. Finch, patting your hand and blaming your womb for a sickness that was clinging to the very walls around him. And worst of all, you see yourself, beaming with pride at your tea party, basking in the envy of your friends, a happy, ignorant queen reigning over a court of slow, certain death. The sensory world attacks you. You can now smell it clearly, a faint, sweet, garlicky odor underneath the scent of beeswax and old paper. It is the breath of the mold, the exhalation of the arsenic. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece, once a comforting, domestic sound, is now a sinister countdown. Each tick is another breath, another dose of poison for your family. You touch your own arm, your fingers tracing the edge of one of the sores. It is not a sign of imbalanced humours. It is a burn. A chemical burn delivered slowly, patiently from the inside out. The horror finally subsides, and what rushes in to fill the void is a wave of guilt so vast and powerful it threatens to drown you. It is a physical sensation, a crushing weight on your chest. This is your fault. Your vanity, your ambition, your pathetic need to win a silent, meaningless social war has led to this. You wanted the perfect home, and in your pursuit of that perfection, you have poisoned the people you love most in the world. The guilt is quickly followed by rage, a hot white fury. You are angry at the chemists who created this color, at the manufacturers who sold it without a word of warning, at the doctors who were too ignorant to see the truth. But beneath it all is a deeper, colder rage directed at yourself. How could you have been so blind? How could you have prioritized the opinions of your neighbors over the health of your own children? You stand up. The movement is stiff, robotic. The emotional storm has passed, leaving behind a cold, hard, terrifying clarity. The dread is still there, a block of ice in your stomach, but it is no longer paralyzing. It is fuel. You look around the magnificent, murderous room one last time, not with pride, not with horror, but with the cold resolve of a general who has finally understood the nature of the enemy. The time for denial, for excuses, for vanity is over. The time for fighting back has begun. You remain frozen in the center of your drawing room, the newspaper lying discarded at your feet like a shed skin. The beautiful, silent room has transformed around you. It is no longer a stage for your social triumphs, but a meticulously decorated crime scene, and the chief suspect is you. The initial shock, that cold, heart-stopping plunge into horror, has passed, leaving in its wake the sickening practical question that is now screaming in your mind. What do you do now? The question is simple, but the answer is a choice between two equally impossible futures, each one a unique and exquisitely tailored form of ruin. This is the world's worst case of buyer's remorse, a regret so profound it has its own body count. Your first instinct, a primal urge born of pure terror, is to do nothing, to simply close the newspaper, put it in the fire, and pretend you never read it. This is path A, the path of denial. Your mind, a skilled lawyer in the art of self-preservation, begins to make the case. Is the Times truly an infallible source? Newspapers are prone to sensationalism after all. And these scientists, these whistleblowers, are they not just radicals with a grudge against modern industry? Perhaps your wallpaper is different. Perhaps the manufacturer of your particular peacock-feathered design used a safer, more refined process. Perhaps Dr. Finch was right, And this is all just a nervous affliction, a collective hysteria whipped up by alarmist reporting. To keep the wallpaper would be so much easier. It would mean no confessions, no catastrophic expense, no public humiliation. Life could go on. You would simply have to air the room more often, forbid the children from playing on the floor, and pray that a robust constitution and a healthy dose of ignorance would see you all through. But even as you think it, you know it's a lie. You would have to live as a secret keeper in your own home, a warden in your own prison. Every time one of your children coughed, every time your husband complained of a stomachache, you would feel a fresh stab of cold, silent guilt. You would be watching your family wither day by day, knowing you could stop it, but choosing the preservation of your pride over the preservation of their lives. And so your mind recoils from that horror and is forced to contemplate path B, the path of action, the path of ruin. What would this path demand? First, a fortune. You spent a scandalous amount of money on this paper, money that was meant to last the year. To have it all torn down now, barely a season after it was installed, and then to pay for new paper and new decorators, it would be financially crippling. Your husband would be furious. It would mean years of scrimping and saving, a humiliating retreat from the comfortable lifestyle you have fought so hard to achieve. But the financial cost, as staggering as it is, pales in comparison to the social cost. The humiliation would be absolute, a public spectacle of failure. You would have to explain yourself to your husband, to your friends, to your servants, and the story would get out. It would spread through the neighborhood like a contagion. Mrs. Abernathy would learn of it, and her victory would be so total, so devastating, it would be spoken of for a generation. You can already hear the whispers at the next tea party you fail to attend. Did you hear about her? She nearly poisoned her entire family for the sake of some fashionable wallpaper. So terribly tragic, and so common. You would become a cautionary tale, a social pariah, the woman whose vanity almost cost her everything. The beautiful room, once the symbol of your ascent, would become the symbol of your spectacular fall from grace. Every scrap of paper torn from the walls would feel like a piece of your own reputation being shredded before the eyes of the world. You are paralyzed, trapped between these two impossible choices, a quiet, secret damnation, or a loud public crucifixion. You sink into a chair, your head in your hands, the faint, garlicky smell of the room filling your lungs like the breath of the devil himself. For a long while, you can do nothing but weigh the two horrors in your mind. And then, you hear a small, weak cough from the nursery down the hall. The sound cuts through your paralysis like a bolt of lightning. It is your daughter. Slowly, as if in a trance, you stand and walk out of the drawing room, closing the door softly behind you, as if to trap the monster inside. You walk to the nursery. The room is quiet and dim. Your two children are asleep in their little beds, their faces pale and waxy in the afternoon light. Your son is breathing shallowly, a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. Your daughter, the one who coughed, has dark circles under her eyes. They are so small, so fragile, so utterly dependent on you for their safety, and you have failed them. You have surrounded them with beauty, and that beauty is a predator. In this quiet, simple room, away from the intoxicating allure of the parlor, the choice becomes brutally, blindingly clear. There is no dilemma, there is no debate. Social ruin is a temporary embarrassment. The death of a child is an eternal hell. Your pride, your status, the opinion of Mrs. Abernathy, it all evaporates, turning to ash in the face of the fierce, primal love you feel for the small, vulnerable people sleeping in this room. A new feeling takes root where the dread once was, a cold, hard resolve. You know what you must do, and you know it must be done now. You spend the rest of the afternoon in a state of quiet, focused preparation. You prepare your arguments. You gather your courage. When your husband returns home that evening, weary from his day in the city, you do not greet him at the door as you usually do. You meet him in the hallway and simply say, "We must talk," in the study. Not in the parlor, He sees the look on your face and knows this is not a prelude to a domestic squabble. This is something different. In the safety of the dark, wood-paneled study, you tell him everything. You show him the newspaper article. You connect the list of symptoms to his own illness, to the children's fatigue, to the death of the dog. You confess your vanity, your ambition, your terrible, catastrophic mistake. His reaction is a storm of emotions. He is shocked at first, then furious at the manufacturers, at the doctors, at you for your foolishness and for the fortune you have wasted. But as he listens, as the full, horrifying scope of the situation dawns on him, his anger gives way to a shared, terrified sense of purpose. He looks at you, not with condemnation, but with the grim understanding of a fellow soldier who has just been told the fortress is breached. That night, you do not sleep. You sit together, planning. The next morning, you are ready. You ring for your maid, Mary. She enters the morning room, looking pale and unwell as always. You look her directly in the eye. Mary, you say, your voice clear and steady, devoid of all its former pretensions. Effective immediately, the drawing room is to be sealed. No one, not me, not the master, and especially not the children, is to enter it under any circumstances. Take a sheet and cover the doorway. Tomorrow, we begin the work of tearing down the wallpaper. Mary stares at you, her mouth agape, utterly bewildered by this strange, sudden command. But she sees the look in your eyes, a look she has never seen before, and she simply nods. Yes, madam, she whispers, and scurries off to do your bidding. The first order has been given. The battle for your home and for your family's lives has begun. The order has been given. A sheet, hastily pulled from the linen closet, now hangs over the doorway to your drawing room, a crude and pathetic quarantine sign. It turns the grandest room in your house into a place of shame and fear. The children are told the room is being repaired and are forbidden from going near it, a command they obey with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Your home, once a carefully orchestrated stage for social performance, is now fractured. Life must be rearranged around this sealed-off chamber of horrors, this monument to your own catastrophic mistake. Every time you walk past the sheeted doorway, you feel a fresh wave of nausea that has nothing to do with arsenic and everything to do with guilt. But sealing the room is only the first step. The monster must be removed. This is not a task you can undertake yourself, nor one you can entrust to your already ailing servants. You need professionals, or at least what passes for professionals in an age with no concept of hazardous waste disposal. You summon a team of workmen, the same firm that so proudly installed the paper just a few short months ago. The foreman, a burly man with plaster dust permanently etched into his eyebrows, arrives, expecting another simple, profitable job. The conversation is a masterclass in euphemism and evasion. There is a problem with the paper in the drawing room, you begin, your voice a carefully controlled monotone. It is giving off a certain miasma, a dampness in the air. We have been advised that it must all be removed, immediately. The foreman looks at you, bewildered. The paper's not a year old, madam. It's the finest quality. You hold his gaze. Nevertheless, you say, your tone leaving no room for argument. It must go, all of it. I want it scraped from the walls, down to the bare plaster. And your men must wear masks over their faces while they work, as a precaution against the dust. He agrees, of course, though the look on his face says he believes he is dealing with another case of hysterical, wealthy woman eccentricity. He quotes you a price that is double what the installation cost, a premium for the strange and urgent nature of the request. You agree without haggling. The next morning, they arrive. Their idea of safety equipment is a collection of dusty rags tied loosely around their noses and mouths, a gesture about as effective at stopping microscopic arsenic particles as holding up a tennis racket to stop the rain. They enter the sealed room armed with buckets of hot water and wide metal scrapers. You retreat to the opposite end of the hallway, a nervous general listening to the sounds of a battle you cannot watch. The work begins, and it is brutal. The sound is a wet, violent scraping, the shriek of metal against plaster, punctuated by the grunts of the workmen. With every strip they pull down, with every section they scrape away, a fresh cloud of poison is released into the air. The dampness from the water they use to soften the paste aerosolizes the arsenic, turning the air into a thick, toxic soup. The fine, green dust, once a shimmering, almost beautiful feature of the room, is now a swirling, choking fog of death. The very act of removing the poison is making the room exponentially more dangerous. The workmen, sweating and complaining behind their useless masks, have no idea that they are scraping years off their own lives with every motion. You can hear them coughing through the closed door, a dry, rasping sound that makes your stomach clench with a fresh wave of guilt. After 2 days of grueling labor, the job is done. The workmen emerge, their faces streaked with green-tinged sweat, looking exhausted and confused. The foreman declares the walls are bare. You pay them, and they leave, no doubt with a fantastic story to tell at the pub that night about the mad lady and her poisonous parlour. Now, a new problem presents itself. In the centre of your desecrated drawing room sits a massive, damp, sticky mountain of scraped-off wallpaper. It is a pile of pure poison, a condensed monument to your folly. What do you do with it? You cannot simply put it out with the rubbish. There are no designated landfills, no hazardous waste protocols, and so, in a final, spectacular act of environmental irony, you instruct the gardener to build a bonfire. In the small manicured garden at the back of your house, the same garden where you buried your dog, he creates a pyre. The servants, their faces a mixture of fear and fascination, carry the heaps of toxic paper and dump them onto the pile. You stand at the back door and give the order. The gardener strikes a match. The fire catches slowly at first, the damp paper smouldering and hissing, releasing a foul-smelling steam. Then, the flames take hold, and the great green detox reaches its dramatic climax. The beautiful peacock feathers, the elegant patterns you so admired, curl and blacken, turning to ash. But the fire does not destroy the arsenic. It vaporizes it, releasing it from the paper and sending it skyward in a thick, greyish-green plume of smoke. You watch in horrified silence as this toxic cloud rises from your garden, a poisonous offering to the heavens. You have successfully taken the contained, domestic poison that was slowly killing your family and turned it into a generous, airborne gift to the entire neighborhood. The plume drifts lazily over the adjacent gardens. It wafts over Mrs. Abernathy's prize-winning roses. It settles on the washing lines of your less fortunate neighbours. Children playing in the street stop and point at the strange-coloured smoke rising from your chimney. In your desperate, frantic attempt to cleanse your own home, you have performed an act of unwitting chemical warfare on your entire community. The irony is so thick, so potent, you can almost taste it, and you realize with a jolt that the metallic tang in your mouth is probably not just a metaphor. When the fire dies down, you are left with a pile of grey, toxic ash and a drawing room that looks like a war zone. The walls are scarred and ravaged, patches of stained plaster showing through like old wounds. The room is hideous, a brutal testament to the violence that has been done there. But for the first time in months, you can breathe the air without a sense of creeping dread. The beauty is gone, but so is the beast. The great green detox is complete. The poison has been exorcised from your home, if not from your conscience. You stand in the doorway of your ugly, ruined, blessedly safe room, and you know that the recovery has only just begun. The great green detox is complete, but the silence that follows is not one of peace but of exhaustion. Your home, once a battlefield, is now a hospital. Recovery, you learn, is a slow, unglamorous, and deeply tedious process. Chronic arsenic poisoning does not simply vanish when the source is removed, it leaves behind a long, dark shadow. The children's energy returns, but slowly, like a weak spring struggling to push through a long winter. Your husband's coughs subside, but a certain fragility remains. The sores on your skin fade into pale, silvery scars, permanent souvenirs of your affair with fashion. The physical poison may be gone, but the psychological poison lingers. You find yourself unable to trust the world in the same way. You eye new products with deep suspicion. You read food labels with the scrutiny of a detective. And you develop a lifelong aversion to the color green. Months pass. The scarred, ugly walls of the drawing room stand as a constant, silent accusation. You cannot bear to look at them, but you lack the funds and the spirit for another grand redecoration. Eventually, when the family finances have recovered just enough, you make a choice. You do not choose a bold new pattern. You do not choose a sophisticated modern color. You instruct the decorators to paint the room a plain, unassuming, and utterly blessedly safe shade of beige. Your long, traumatic journey through the world of interior design has brought you right back to where you started, a world of brown. But this time, the drabness does not feel like a social failure. It feels like a sanctuary. It is the color of survival. You have learned the hard way that a boring home is a small price to pay for a living family. Your story, as dramatic and painful as it was not unique. As the truth, trumpeted by newspapers and mocked in cartoons, spread across the country, a wave of panic and recognition swept through the middle classes. Suddenly, families everywhere were looking at their own beautiful walls with a dawning horror. A great, nationwide exorcism began. People scraped and scrubbed, tore down years of fashionable decor, and held bonfires in their own back gardens, unknowingly fumigating their neighborhoods in a collective act of panicked cleansing. The beautiful, vibrant green that had been a symbol of status and modernity just a year before now became a mark of shame, a sign of a household that was either ignorant or dangerously out of date. The trend had not just faded, it had died a sudden, violent, and well-deserved death. You would think that a public health crisis of this magnitude, a plague caused not by God or nature, but by a purchasable product, would result in swift, decisive government action. You would be wrong. The governments of the 19th century were staunch disciples of the Church of laissez-faire capitalism. The prevailing belief was that industry should be left alone to innovate and generate wealth, and that the market, in its infinite wisdom, would regulate itself. To interfere with a manufacturer's right to put whatever he pleased into his product was seen as an assault on progress, a slippery slope to socialism, and, worst of all, bad for business. Politicians, many of whom had financial interests in the very factories producing the toxic goods, rose in Parliament to argue that the British consumer should be free to choose, and free to die from their choices. The arsenic wallpaper scandal was not happening in a vacuum. It was just one symptom of a much larger disease. The unregulated industrial age had turned the entire consumer landscape into a minefield. The same lead that was making your face paint so smooth and white was also causing nerve damage. The mercury used to make the felt for fashionable top hats was driving hat makers insane, giving rise to the phrase "mad as a hatter." Food manufacturers, in their quest for profit, were masters of poison-laced creativity. They colored pickles with copper to make them a more appetizing green, whitened bread with chalk and alum, and bulked out pepper with dust. Your entire world, from your walls to your wardrobe to your dinner plate, was a grand, unregulated experiment, and you and your family were the unwitting lab rats. Slowly, painfully, and with the reluctance of a glacier, things began to change. The change was not driven by the foresight of politicians, but forced upon them by the sheer, undeniable weight of the body count. The arsenic wallpaper crisis, combined with these other scandals, created a public outcry that could no longer be ignored. The first consumer protection laws were born, not of principle, but of panic. They were piecemeal, reactionary, and often pathetically weak. A history of locking the barn door after the horse has bolted, died of poison, and been rendered into glue. The Arsenic Act of 1851 had been a first step, attempting to regulate the sale of raw arsenic, but it did little to stop manufacturers from putting it in their products. Over the decades that followed, a slow, agonizing series of pharmacy acts and sale of food and drugs acts would be passed, each one a response to a new, horrifying public revelation. This is your true, unwitting legacy, your suffering, and the suffering of thousands of families like yours. The headaches, the sores, the dead children, the ruined lives was the price that had to be paid. You were the data. Your tragedy became the gruesome anecdote, the statistical proof that was finally powerful enough to overcome corporate greed and political indifference. You did not choose to be a martyr for the cause of public safety, but you became one all the same. The boring, regulated world we live in now, a world of warning labels, safety standards, and government agencies, was built upon the foundations of your misery. We, in the future, can buy a can of paint without fearing for our lives because you, in the past, could not. We live in the boring beige safety that your suffering paid for. And so, your life goes on, quieter, wiser, and much more suspicious of new trends. The memory of the beautiful, deadly room never truly fades. It lingers like the faint, metallic taste in your mouth, a permanent reminder of the high cost of keeping up appearances. Years later, you might see a young woman admiring a new, fashionable dress in a shop window, her eyes full of the same desperate, aesthetic hunger you once knew so well, and you feel a pang of pity. She has no idea how safe she is, and no idea who paid the price for it. The final, bitter lesson is a simple one, a truth you learned in the ugliest way possible. Fashion is fleeting, trends are a trap, and the opinions of your neighbors are worth absolutely nothing. But arsenic, in the scars it leaves and the lessons it teaches, is forever. And so, the story of the beautiful, poisonous green comes to its quiet end. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this time relaxing, I hope you'll return for another story soon. But for now, let the voices and the cautionary tales fade away. Let the shimmering parlors and the flickering gaslights dissolve into the soft darkness of your own room. There is nothing left to analyze, and nothing to fear. There is only this moment of peace, and the gentle promise of sleep. Rest well. Good night.